All right.
Hey Ron, how's everything going with you so far?
Going well. Thank you.
Of course, no problem. I guess the first thing is like I know that you're dealing with the treatments as you guys prepare for week one. What are the challenges of trying to deal with the personal matter, but also trying to get the team prepared for this week one?
Well, hopefully, the messaging has been gotten across to them during training camp, and that all they've done is kind of reiterated and regurgitated what we've tried to teach these guys and get these guys to understand. I got a chance to watch yesterday's tape. It was good, but as I told them, hey, good enough to win is good enough to get beat. So let's be better than that today. So I thought they had a good practice. I came in, practice had already started when I got back, but I got in, and from the things I looked, I thought the tempo was what we're looking for. I thought they practiced fast. Their mistakes were limited, compared to what we had during training camp. So I think the guys are focusing in on what they need to do and how they need to do it, which I thought was important.
You've got a lot of your players returning back. Antonio Gandy Golden with the concussion, Sadiq Charles with the calf strain, Kendall Fuller was back participating yesterday. How much does it mean to this team to have those players that either one project as possible starters or possible depth getting back into the mix right now, just getting healthy right now?
Well, I think it's important because if you get guys back on the field that you guys have slated as starters or guys that we're going to really help and impact, it's important because the one thing you want to be able to do is make sure those guys are working, they're getting their work done, and they're working with the guys that they're going to play with. That's where it becomes important because you want them to all have a feel for one another when they're on the field.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Rihanna.
Ron, this is Nikki Javala with the Washington Post. Just listening to Dwayne talk about coverages and the way he breaks down plays, he seems to do a remarkable job of communicating what he sees. How is he doing on the other side of that, just in terms of learning the concepts and the new plays, and has he picked it up fairly quickly?
He has, Nikki, and that's one of the things that we talked about. Again, I go back to my January conversations, and then from that point on, a lot of things that we talked about, in just having listened to Scott and Kenny talk about his growth and his development as a quarterback, you feel pretty comfortable that he's getting it. And really, not everything should be on Dwayne. I mean, you've got to have the players around you that know what they're supposed to do. You guys are doing their job in terms of protections and blocking schemes, and guys that run routes. So I'm pleased at his development and the development of the guys around him. That's probably one of the big keys too. That I don't want people to forget. That's not all about just Dwayne, but it's about the other 10 guys that he's playing with when he's on the field.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Ron, kind of got a random one for you. Just back in January, when during your opener, you talked about a little bit how the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Seahawks have this coach-centered approach, but they were also coaches that were on their second or third stint, even with Seattle. Do you believe that a coaches are more successful the second time around, or have you looked into that at all?
Yeah, it's kind of a fact that's out there. If you go back, and there was a terrific article written about Andy Reid taking the job with Kansas City, and the conversations he had and what was leading up to that direction is that they found that coaches have had had fairly good success their first time, but didn't go all the way, seem to come out and do things better because we've gone through it, we've made those mistakes, we know what we're looking for, we know how we want to build our team, our organization. And I think that's really the whole approach is that, again, I don't have all the answers, but I learned a lot. And I like to believe the things that we're trying to do, things we're trying to implement, the way we're trying to structure the organization as far as football is concerned, how we run things on football, how we do things on football, then the type of players we bring in, how we coach those players, and what we expect of those players, and then how we play. I think that's the thing that we're trying to do. It's, when we talk about building a sustainable winning culture, it's not just about your character and your personality, but it's about the way you do things, about the way you play, and the type of players you bring in, and how you coach them.
Right. And you were in Carolina such a long time. How do you kind of avoid that? I did this a certain way, and now I have to adapt. Like, how do you adapt, or what are some things that you've tried to change maybe over the?
One of the things I learned is when I was in Carolina was that you do have to adapt. You have to adapt to each personality, each person. I know a lot of coaches like to start out. Well, we have a theme for the year. Whatever your theme for the year that's going to evolve as you go through it. It's going to change, and you've got to change and evolve to your circumstances. And that's what I've done in the past. Is that based on I may come out and say, hey, let's earn the right. Let's earn the right. Let's earn the right. Well, you can do that all the way through training camp, and as you start the season, you've earned the right to be here. Now, what's the next step? Well, hey, let's go out and now let's begin our journey. Let's climb that mountain. Let's get to the top. Let's get to the peak. And then once you get close to it, it says, hey, we're almost there. We're not finished. Let's continue. Don't look back. It's a long way you've come. So you really have to understand and have a feel, in my opinion, for where your team is, and that's how you adapt to them as well. I mean, because again, why do things that they're not going to be able to do? Let's be realistic. That's one of the things I learned from Mike Ditka, and I go back to those days. But Coach Ditka used to always tell us, hey, I would never ask you to do anything that I didn't do. Now that's a high standard because now we're talking about Hall of Famer. Okay, so if he pushed us to reach that standard, we're reaching a standard he believed what it was. Well, my standard is, hey, I've played on a championship team. I know what it takes to get to the top. I've been very close 2 other times, but we didn't get to the top. So when it comes to it, once we get to that peak, I'm going to draw on my experiences as a player and see if that helps.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, when we talk about Dwayne and Alex as both quarterbacks, but also as people, it's pretty easy to see the differences between them. I'm just curious, now that you've been around both of them for a little bit now, what do you see are some of the similarities about them, both as players on the field, but also as people off it?
I love their competitive spirit. I really do. I mean, Dwayne wants to be good, and he's shown me he wants to be good. He's done the things that we talked about, and he's followed through. With Alex, you see the competitive spirit, you see the drive, you know what he's focused on, you know what he wants, and then to sit down and talk with him and hear him tell you exactly, to me that's impressive. And I think both those young men epitomize that. I think as people off the field, they both come across as the right type of young men you want out there in your community, the types of young men that can impact your community. And that's one of the things that I've been very pleased to find out about both those guys, and especially Dwayne because he's so young.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, we saw your first depth chart the other day. Can you shed some light on what J.D. McKissick did during that number 1 running spot?
Okay, just so everybody knows, that was an unofficial one. That was really one that was, we had talked with our media relations because we had to put one out. The running back spot is going to be by committee, okay? So if all of a sudden Scott decides to go with 12 personnel or 21 personnel, you're going to have a different running back. You could have somebody else in there instead of. So it could be any of those guys that's on the 53. He calls whatever group he wants. That's really going to be who the first running back will be. So it could be any of those groups. So just so you guys know, JD, we just happened to put on the chart first.
Good deal. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, just kind of continuing from the depth chart, but when you get to game day, is there a position that for you is easy to make inactive, like a 4th running back, and you don't have 6 wideouts, so do you need all 4 running backs?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that helps us now is that the fact that if you have 8 offensive linemen up, you get to have an extra person for your 47. Now it becomes 48. So not only will you be able to, say we're going to go with 5 wide receivers or 3 tight ends or 3 backs or 5 corners, you now know that you have that bonus player that you can elevate. Now, because you do that, and if you already have it planned out that you're going to have to go with a lesser number one position, you can now pull up a guy from the practice squad as a special teams player, as an extra wide receiver, whatever you want at that point. So there's going to be some interesting moves that will happen come game day. Game day won't be set until probably Saturday. So one of the things I have to do is we've talked about it the last couple of days, and in terms of Nate Caxter, our special teams coach, talking about who he would like for the pop-up if we use one. Do you want the guy that plays gunner, or do you want the guy that is an extra returner, or something else like that? So you have some flexibility now.
A couple of weeks ago, you talked about keeping Antonio Gibson a secret. Now you're talking about maybe pulling guys up from the practice squad on game day. Are you really trying to catch some folks by surprise on Sunday?
No. I mean, who we are, they'll see very quickly what we're going to do. To me, there really is no surprises. As a coach going into this and you're game planning for somebody, especially the opener, you're going to try and look at every possibility. I mean, we know who their quarterbacks are. We know who their backup quarterback is that they took in the second round, and we know what he's capable. So, we go into this thinking, okay, we may have to prepare for a 2 quarterback set where one's going to split out and use him as a running back or use him as a receiver. May hand the ball to him, and all of a sudden he might throw it. You know what I'm saying? So we have to prepare for all those things. we saw what they did in the Super Bowl a couple of years, so you know they're not afraid to. And I also know Doug's history with the fourth down situation. So there's a lot we've got to prepare for, and we hopefully you hit it right, and they do come out in one of those formations or things like that, and that way you can say, hey, we were ready for it, and we expected it.
Thank you, Ron. It's good to see you today.
All right, thank you, JP.
Hey, Ron, you've talked about your desire to want to improve your divisional record. What can a divisional record win to start the season as well at the beginning of this rebuild do to kind of boost you going forward in the season?
Well, I think it's one of those things that you can build momentum off. I mean, remember, they're the standard now. They won the division last year, been to the playoffs, 3 out of the last 4 years, and a Super Bowl and won it. So the thing that we have to do is understand that this is the measuring stick. You want to win your division, you've got to be able to beat teams like this. And for us, when I was in Carolina, it was either Atlanta or New Orleans or Tampa Bay. And then you go out, and now you say in the NFC, who do you have to beat? Well, back then for us, it was Seattle. Seattle was that team. So that's kind of how you look at it. You look at, got to win in my division first, and then who is the gold standard for the conference? Then that's who you've got to beat. And then if you can do that, now who's the gold standard for the league? Well, it's for such a long time it's been New Orleans, and now Kansas City's in that position. So there's so many measuring sticks, and I think it's one step at a time. So you got to be realistic. To me, it starts with the division. If you can win all your games in your division, you give yourself a chance, and then you go from there.
Thank you, Ron.
All righty.
Hey, Ron, it's Chris Russell. Hope you're feeling better. This may sound like
You're muted, Chris.
Chris, try it again.
Sorry, Chris. Got to move on. Sam.
Hey, Ron, I know you're big on learning from others and kind of reading and exploring other situations. I wonder, as you kind of go through your personal situation right now, I wonder if you've looked for examples of something like this. I know it's unique, but I wonder if you've tried to learn from others who've had to kind of go through similar situations.
Yeah, I have. I've actually had several coaches that have gone through this that have reached out to me. Obviously, Chuck Pagano, and his was even tougher than mine. I mean, mine was, I had a tough day yesterday, but, from what I've read from Chuck and heard from Chuck, his was unbelievable. So my hat's off to him because, to do what he's had to do and to get back to where he is, that's a phenomenal story. I mean, there's been other coaches, the Rams has a special teams coach that went through the same thing, and his was documented, and I had an opportunity to read it. And I've talked with him, and it's been nice to having guys reach out like that. I've had some high school coaches that have reached out as well that have gone through the same thing, and they talk about the one thing that kept them going was their desire and drive to coach and get in front of their players every day as much as they could. And I'll tell you what, it was pretty special today to get out there in front of the guys. I was a little bit late, but when you come out and guys come up to you and they walk around you and they dab you up and just they just want to let you know they're thinking about you. That's really cool.
And I guess for you, obviously, this being still new, still early in that process, are you starting to figure out things like, hey, I need to do this or I need to do that in order to still maximize my time?
Yes, there are. And I'm very fortunate, too, that I got a group of coaches I trust impeccably. And Jack has done a great job for these. So has Scotty and Nate. And some of the other coaches, some of the position coaches. Richard Rogers, who's been with me for a number of years, is one of those guys that's out there now kind of assuming my role, cheerleading, leading the guys on, pushing them on, hey, let's go tempo, it's important, play fast. That's the thing that I feel I have comfort in. And then the other day I grabbed a group of the guys that are leadership guys, so guys that have been here for a while or guys that are going to play impactful roles on our team. I got them together and I talked to them. I said, hey, look, let's take ownership. There's going to be times when I'm not going to be able to make it. There's going to be times when I'm going to be low. Those are the times you guys got to pick it up, and that's all part of it. Is because now you have to. You've got to do the things that that are going to help you and your teammates go forward. And it was a good conversation. I really appreciated the guys too for that.
We got time for 3.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, glad you're back there today. Good to see you. What you've had to handle so much this summer, and you seem to do it in a very even-keeled manner. Why do you feel you've been able to handle all this in that fashion?
Well, I think because of the people around me. I've got a good staff of coaches, as I said, and my support staff are tremendous. I know you guys don't think much of Sean. We're trying to improve that. Him and Paul Kelly and I mean, there's a whole host of guys that have just been outstanding and have helped me. Our guys with the player development. I think Doug and Malcolm have truly helped, and then the other folks that are on our support staff. Our video people with Brackens and our strength and conditioning guys and equipment and I'll tell you another guy that's been tremendous has been Ryan Vermillion. Not only is he's our head trainer, but he's our infection control officer. And every now and then he's my part-time chauffeur, and he takes me down to the hospital in between breaks and stuff like that. So when you have that type of people, you can relax, focus on yourself when it's time to. But then when you're back in the building and you've got the energy, you got to do. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to map out when I can and when I can't. But because I got guys I can trust, I feel great. I really do. It's a little lesson I learned from John Madden, and that's about when you delegate the authority, you have to most certainly set the standard. And these guys have gone above and beyond. So it's been good to see that.
Are you doing more of that delegating in your second stint than you were early in your first round at Carolina?
Yes, that to me I think is one of the things that I've really come to appreciate is that when these guys, hey, this is it, this is what we need, this is how we need it done, and they go out and do it. And the thing that's neat about it is you watch some of these guys take it above and beyond. And that to me is when you really, I think, guys are beginning to understand, not just for the coaches, but for the players as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Coach. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute there. Good to see you back today. We talked to Dwayne yesterday, and he was great. Talked about your relationship and how you'll have a meeting in the restaurant in the hallway. What's that like as that relationship is developed, and when did you kind of see it click for him? I know you've spoken about him before, but when did it kind of click? And then again, to just feel comfortable enough to have those conversations wherever with a guy that you're still learning to feel out.
He's always kind of been that way. He's always been open. He's always wanted to talk. He's reached out constantly. He'll text me. He'll call me. And I'll do the same. If something pops into my head, I want to do it. And I think it's something that you learn is that you have to have that relationship with your quarterback and with your quarterbacks. But I think Dwayne has really worked at those things. And again, he took it to heart when he and I had this conversation. I told him, I said, this is what it's about. And one of the things that I also did when I came in, when I was interviewing, Kenny Zampese and Scott Turner and the other guys for those positions. One of the things I wanted them to do was, hey, give me a plan. Tell me how you're going to coach this young man. And one of the things that they all said on their sheets was, develop a relationship with the quarterback. Develop a relationship with the quarterback. So to me, I know, that the sooner you get to have a feel for somebody, as soon as you can get somebody to trust you, there are going to be a lot of good things that can happen. And that's what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to develop, not just with Dwayne, but with the rest of the guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, Scott Abraham, ABC7. Good to see you.
Hey, Scott.
Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the offseason in terms of COVID-19, organizational changes, your personal cancer diagnosis and fight. I know we're still a few days away until the opener, but what do you think your emotions are going to be like on that sideline? Is it going to be different than, I guess, other openers you've experienced because of just how much change and what this offseason has entailed for you and for this organization?
Finally. I promise you that will be my first thought when that ball gets kicked. Finally, we're playing football. And I hope it continues. I really do, because to me, when that happens, that's going to signal some normalcy in our lives and in my life for sure. That's what I look forward to on opening day, is that we've gotten to something that we as coaches and athletes and an organization, fans and the fan base can all kind of wrap their arms around and say, man, at least we got some normalcy in a time that is crazy. Now, we don't have fans in the stands yet, but hopefully somewhere along the lines, we get the vaccine, people have learned and understood how to social distance, so we can bring people back in and we can enjoy playing football again in front of our crowd, in front of our fans. And that to me will be really cool. I mean, like I said, Scott, the big thing is, finally just something a little normal.